Hello, guys. When the laws of science bleed into the laws of the night, the world does not need a hero. It needs a surgeon to cut out the rot. The fog over London was not merely weather. It was a shroud, heavy with the taste of coal dust and unwashed bodies. Sherlock Holmes did not stand on the pavement. He crouched in the mud of the darker, forgotten alleyways of Spitalfields. Before him lay a body that defied the natural order. It was a young woman, a streetwalker by the look of her tattered dress. But her skin was not pale with death. It was flushed, vibrant, warm to the touch despite the freezing rain. Holmes pulled back the collar of her dress. There were no bite marks. Instead, there was a port, a brass valve sutured directly into the jugular vein. He placed his ear to her chest. There was no heartbeat. There was only the rhythmic, damp hiss of a hydraulic pump. Holmes stood, his mind racing through the impossible variables. This was not murder. This was manufacturing. A shadow detached itself from the gloom. It did not make a sound. The rain did not seem to touch it. Count Dracula did not introduce himself. He simply existed, a void in the visual field of the night. "You are looking at my property," the vampire said. His voice was not a growl but a low vibration that rattled the teeth. Holmes did not flinch. He did not turn. "I am looking at a corpse that breathes, Count. It seems someone has found a use for your livestock other than feeding." Dracula stepped into the dim halo of the gaslight. His face was ancient, a landscape of beautiful, terrible boredom. "3 of my kind have vanished this week. I found this one wandering. She does not know me. She does not fear the cross. She has been rewritten." Holmes lit a cigarette, shielding the flame from the wind. "It is an engine. Someone is filtering your blood, stripping the curse, and using the regenerative properties to fuel a biological machine. They are curing death, Count, and they are using you as the raw material." Dracula's eyes flared with a cold, red hate. "Find him, detective. Find him so I can peel the skin from his bones." "We will find him," Holmes corrected, blowing smoke into the rain. "Because if this technology spreads, the Empire will not need detectives, and it will certainly not fear vampires. We are both endangered species tonight." The trail led them not to a dungeon, but to a hospital. The St. Jude's Sanatorium for the Incurable sat on a hill overlooking the Thames, a fortress of red brick and misery. It was a place where the poor went to die quietly. Tonight, it was silent. Too silent. Holmes picked the lock of the service entrance with the wire of his pocket watch. Dracula simply walked through the heavy oak door, splintering the wood with a casual shove of his shoulder. They moved through the corridors. The air smelled of iodine, lavender, and old iron. They found the main ward. It was not filled with beds. It was filled with tanks. Inside the glass cylinders floated children. They were pale, emaciated, their bodies connected to intricate webs of tubing and pumps. The fluid pulsing through them was unmistakably rich, dark crimson. Dracula stopped. He placed a hand on the glass of the nearest tank. The child inside opened its eyes. They were black, void of iris or sclera. The boy hissed, a sound of pure hunger. "Abominations," Dracula whispered. "He creates ghouls." "No," a voice echoed from the balcony above. "I create survivors." Dracula and Holmes looked up. A man stood at the railing. He looked nothing like a monster. He was middle-aged, his tweed suit worn at the elbows, his hair thinning and gray. He wore spectacles that magnified eyes red with exhaustion. This was Dr. Silas Vane. He held a clipboard, his hand trembling slightly. "You trespass in a place of healing, Mr. Holmes," Vane said softly. "And you, Count, you are an unexpected donor." Holmes stepped forward, his eyes scanning the structure for structural weaknesses. "Healing? You are pumping the blood of the undead into the veins of the dying. You are condemning these children to an eternity of hunger." "I am saving them," Vane's voice cracked, losing its composure. "Look at them, Holmes. This boy, Timothy. He had consumption. His lungs were rotting inside his chest. He coughed up pieces of himself every morning. Now he is strong. He will never get sick. He will never die. Is that not the goal of your precious science? To preserve life?" Dracula bared his fangs. "You preserve nothing. You prolong suffering. You steal the gift of darkness and sell it as medicine." "You speak of gifts?" Vane laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. He walked down the stairs, ignoring the predator in the room. "I had a daughter, Clara. She was 7. She died screaming, Mr. Holmes. Her body failed her. I prayed to God. I prayed to the devil. Neither answered. So I became an engineer. I studied your biology, Count. It is perfect, efficient, immortal. Why should such perfection belong to a parasite? Why not give it to those who deserve to live?" Holmes watched the man. He saw the grief etched into every line of Vane's face. This was not a madman seeking world domination. This was a father broken by the cruelty of a natural world that Holmes himself served. "The cost, Vane," Holmes said, his voice dropping. "You are a man of logic. Look at the data. They are not human anymore. They are biological weapons. They are alive." Vane screamed. He slammed his hand against a lever on the wall. The locks on the tanks disengaged. The glass hissed and slid open. The children did not step out. They spilled out. Their movements were jerky, wrong. The fluid dripped from their bodies as they twitched. Timothy, the boy Dracula had looked at, stood up. his jaw unhinged, revealing rows of needle-like metallic teeth. "Feed," Vane whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Feed and live." The children shrieked and threw themselves at the intruders. Dracula moved with the speed of a whipcrack. He backhanded the first attacker, sending the child flying into a rack of surgical tools. But he did not strike to kill. He hesitated. These were fledglings. Distorted, yes, but of his blood. Holmes did not hesitate. He fired his revolver. The bullet struck a girl in the shoulder. She did not fall. She didn't even flinch. The wound closed in seconds, steam rising from the flesh. "Shoot the pumps," Holmes shouted. "They are hydraulic." Dracula grabbed a heavy iron operating table and hurled it, crushing 2 of the creatures against the wall, but they were strong. Timothy leaped onto Dracula's back, tearing at his coat, his metal teeth grinding against the vampire's marble skin. Dracula roared, slamming his back against a pillar to dislodge the creature. He looked at Vane. The doctor stood amidst the chaos, watching his creations with a look of terrified love. He cannot control them, Holmes realized. He pushed the attacking creature away with his cane and rolled under a swinging claw. "Vane, call them off. They will eat you too. They know their father," Vane cried. Timothy turned. He looked at Vane. The hunger in the boy's eyes was absolute. There was no recognition, no love, only the biological imperative to consume fuel. Vane extended his arms. "Timothy, it's Papa." The creature lunged. Holmes sprinted. He tackled Vane, throwing them both to the hard tile floor just as Timothy's claws raked the air where Vane's throat had been. "They do not have souls, Vane," Holmes shouted into the doctor's ear. "You fixed the hardware, but you deleted the software. They are empty." Vane struggled, sobbing. "No, I saved her. I saved Clara. At the far end of the room, a massive containment unit opened." Silence fell over the ward. Even the frenzied children froze. From the darkness of the largest tank walked a figure. It was a girl of maybe 10 years. She was beautiful. Her skin was porcelain, her hair golden curls. But her eyes were glowing blue dials. Her chest was open, revealing a heart of pulsating crystal and brass. "Clara," Vane whispered. He scrambled out of Holmes's grip. The girl looked at Vane. She tilted her head. Her voice was the sound of a phonograph needle scratching a record. "Papa, it hurts." Vane fell to his knees. "I know, darling. I know. But you are alive." "Papa," she said again. "The hunger. It burns." She walked toward him. Dracula stepped in her path. He looked down at the girl. He felt the immense power radiating from her. She was the apex, the perfect synthesis of science and curse. "Move," Vane screamed. "Do not touch her." Dracula looked at the girl. Then he looked at Vane. He saw the tragedy that Holmes had seen, the refusal to let go. "She is in agony, Doctor," Dracula said softly. "You have stitched her into a prison of eternal starvation." Clara looked up at the vampire. "Please, make it stop." Vane froze. He heard the words. He really heard them. For the first time, his obsession cracked, and the reality of his crime poured in. He hadn't saved her. He had resurrected her into hell. Dracula looked at Holmes. The detective nodded. It was a silent agreement on the necessity of mercy. Dracula did not use violence. He knelt before the girl. He placed one clawed hand gently on her head. "I release you, child." Vane screamed, a sound of pure animal desolation. "No!" Dracula's hand moved, a swift, singular motion. He severed the connection between the brass heart and the brain. The light in the blue dials faded. Clara collapsed into Dracula's arms, looking, finally, like a sleeping child. The other creatures, seeing their alpha fall, shrieked in confusion. The psychic link was broken. They collapsed, their artificial systems failing without the central command. Vane sat on the floor. He did not move. He stared at the small, still body in the vampire's arms. Holmes stood up, brushing the dust from his coat. He walked over to Vane. He did not handcuff him. He did not lecture him. "It is over, Silas," Holmes said quietly. Vane looked up. His eyes were dead. "I fixed the body," he whispered. "Why wasn't it enough?" "Because death is not a disease," Holmes replied. "It is the frame that gives life its picture. Without it, we are just ink spilling on a page." Vane looked at his hands. Then he looked at the main pressure valve of the sanatorium's boiler. The gauge was in the red. The fighting had damaged the regulators. "Go," Vane said. Holmes hesitated. "Go," Vane roared. "Take your monster and leave me with mine." Holmes looked at Dracula. The vampire gently laid the body of the girl on the floor. He stood, cowering over the broken father. "You have a courage I lack, Doctor," Dracula said. "I fear death. You looked it in the eye and tried to negotiate. You failed. But I respect the attempt. They left. They ran through the rain-slicked corridors as the building began to groan. They were at the iron gates when the explosion happened. It was not a fireball. It was an implosion of steam and pressure. The Saint Sane. Jude's sanatorium collapsed in on itself, burying the experiments, the grief, and the architect under tons of brick and iron. Holmes and Dracula stood in the rain. They were covered in grime, blood, and the residue of a dream that had turned into a nightmare. Holmes took out a cigarette. It was wet. He threw it away. "He was a good man," Holmes said. "He was a dangerous man," Dracula corrected. "He had hope. Hope is a parasite more dangerous than any vampire. It eats logic. It eats caution. And yet, Holmes said, looking at the ruins, it is the only reason we bother to survive at all. Dracula adjusted his cuffs. We are not friends, Sherlock Holmes. No, Holmes agreed. We are simply two killers who happened to target the same victim tonight. Dracula turned his eyes to the east. The sky was graying. Dawn was coming. Do not hunt me, Dracula said. You have seen what happens when you try to cage the night. Holmes watched him. I do not need to hunt you, Count. Time is the ultimate hunter. It caught Silas Vane. One day it will catch you. Dracula smiled. It was a sad, weary expression. Let us hope you are dead by then, detective. I would miss the conversation. The vampire dissolved into a swarm of mist, drifting away into the sewers, returning to the darkness beneath the city. Holmes stood alone. The sun began to break through the smog, casting a pale, sickly light on the wreckage. He felt the weight of his own mortality. He felt the ache in his joints, the fatigue in his mind. He was human, he was fragile, and for the first time in years he was grateful for it. He turned and began the long walk back to Baker Street. He would tell Watson a version of the truth. He would leave out the tears of the architect. He would leave out the girl with the clockwork heart. Some mysteries were not meant to be solved. They were meant to be buried. The city woke up around him. Carts began to rattle. Shopkeepers opened their shutters. Life went on, oblivious to how close it had come to being cured forever. Holmes blended into the crowd, a ghost in a tweed coat, guarding a world that would never thank him, against monsters that would never stop. Every invention is a tombstone for the old world. Every cure is a curse in disguise. What would you sacrifice to bring back the one you love? Would you break the world to fix a heart? Like, share, and subscribe if you prefer the difficult truth over the beautiful lie. And don't forget to visit my YouTube channel to watch more interesting motivational, thriller, and fictional stories.